Were the Dutch and the Belgians partially to blame for the fall of France in 1940? We can certainly argue that. The Imagine Line did its job. You can argue that it was rubbish, but it did its job. It did it well because obviously the Germans had to go through the Netherlands and Belgium to attack France. But France and Belgium weren't equipped to fight Germany, but they didn't really put as much effort as they could, and cooperation with the Allies between the two nations and on their own weren't great. Let's start with the Dutch. In the interwar years, their defence expenditure was fairly small, and this is partially due to a recession the country was having between 1920 and 1927. But a big issue with this was their army was not even up to scratch in 1918, and they needed to modernise. And when war looked likely, they just didn't put too much effort in. They finally started rearming in 1936, but not at the pace as France and Belgium were doing. This was because the Dutch wanted to stay neutral and stay out of a European war. But put this aside, between 1932 and 1936, the Dutch did not do any drills or army manoeuvres in the summer, and this made their readiness of their soldiers and just the training in general of their soldiers quite shoddy, and they just weren't ready to fight. And you can't ignore this. And then on top of that, their time taken to rearm. They only really took it seriously after the invasion of Poland, but by then every European power wanted to equip their soldiers and be ready for war. So the French weren't obviously going to sell to the Dutch because obviously they needed that armour, the guns, the artillery for themselves. And obviously the Soviets, they couldn't get anything from the Soviets, and when they tried, the Finns captured the equipment. And then on top of that, they even ordered equipment from Germany, and obviously Germany didn't deliver because they were planning to invade the Netherlands and wanted to keep the equipment themselves. When the Germans invaded, the Dutch only had one Renault FT, a couple of tankettes, 39 armoured cars. They're using guns from 1895. They did have a couple of Vickers and Lewis guns though, to be fair. Their artillery was fairly out of date. They just weren't good enough.